As per the plan of Special Order No. 191, on the morning of Friday, September 12, 1862, Major General Stonewall Jackson leads 2/3 of Lee's army in Northern Virginia, divided into 3 wings, against the Federal Garrison at Harper's Ferry under Colonel Dixon S. Miles. Miles' command of about 10,400 men has been reinforced by 2,500 men from Brigadier General Julius White's garrison coming down from Martinsburg on September 12th. Since the start of the war, Harper's Ferry has been a strategically important town on the maps of Union and Confederate generals. The town hosted the Harper's Ferry Armory and Arsenal, the second federal armory created by the U.S. government, until it was destroyed by evacuating Union forces on April 18, 1861. Located at the entrance to the Shenandoah Valley, Harper's Ferry serves as a major supply hub for the East-West Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, as well as the East-West Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. In September 1862, however, the town's importance lay in the fact that its federal garrison under Dixon Miles is situated behind the Confederate Army in Northern Virginia as it invades the state of Maryland further to the east, threatening Lee's supply lines back to Virginia. This is why it is paramount for Stonewall Jackson's forces to reduce the garrison and force its surrender or evacuation from the town as soon as possible. If Lee's invasion is to continue on deeper into Maryland or even into Pennsylvania, his line of communications back into Northern Virginia must be safe from attack. Colonel Miles finds himself in a difficult situation for defending his post at Harper's Ferry, a place that is geographically ill-suited for defense. The town is situated at the bottom of a peninsula on the confluence of the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers, is ringed on 3 sides by steep ridges and mountains, all overlooking the town and forming a bowl-like shape. To the north, across the Potomac River, is Maryland Heights, which looms over Harper's Ferry from above with a summit of 1,448 feet. South across the Shenandoah River are the imposing cliffs of Loudoun Heights, standing 900 feet over the town. Finally, rising to the west of Harper's Ferry is the 669-foot tall plateau known as Bolivar Heights. If artillery batteries were placed on either of these 3 prominent rises, they could rain shot and shell down on the defenders of Harper's Ferry in a classic siege bombardment. Therefore, fortifying the heights around the town is paramount to any Union defense. In the days leading up to the battle, Dixon Miles oversees the buildup of his defenses around Harper's Ferry. When Brigadier General Julius White arrives in town with his Martinsburg garrison, he follows military convention and defers command to Colonel Miles. Few in the federal garrison at Harper's Ferry have confidence in Dixon S. Miles, a former alcoholic who has sworn off drinking, but the after effects of withdrawal are clearly visible in his physical features and attitude. The colonel is dull-witted, sluggish, and at every turn he displays indecisiveness. Miles shows very little initiative in preparing to fend off an enemy attack. Colonel Miles decides to concentrate the bulk of his defense on Bolivar Heights. Back in the spring, during Jackson's Valley campaign, Stonewall had demonstrated against Harper's Ferry from the west before pulling back, which left an impression on Miles emphasizing the importance of holding Bolivar Heights. Miles doesn't appreciate the effectiveness of enemy artillery and rifle fire from Loudoun Heights, so he posts no defenses or fortifications there. However, he is fully aware of the danger posed by the Confederates holding Maryland Heights, so he posts a brigade-sized force there. By the evening of Thursday, September 11th, the federal dispositions in and around Harper's Ferry are complete. Out of his command, Miles creates 4 brigades to defend this key logistics center. The 1st Brigade under Colonel Frederick DeTassey is placed on the northern side of Bolivar Heights. On its left is Colonel William Trimble's 2nd Brigade. The 4th Brigade of Heavy Artillery and Infantry under Colonel William Ward occupies Camp Hill, an earthwork situated in the upper part of the town itself. Miles' final unit, the 3rd Brigade under Colonel Thomas Ford, occupies Maryland Heights. Miles is fully aware that the Confederates are approaching Harper's Ferry long before they actually arrive outside the town, with a Union outpost at Pointer Rocks, Maryland, encountering marching infantry on September 10th. Colonel Miles is content to believe that his 4 brigades are suitable for defending Harper's Ferry, with his main line of defense being posted on Bolivar Heights, a small brigade to hold Maryland Heights, and no one on Loudoun Heights. The coming days will prove if Miles' defenses are enough to hold back the divisions of Stonewall Jackson. The Battle of Harper's Ferry begins on the evening of Friday, September 12th, when Lafayette McLaws' division approaches Maryland Heights from the east with orders to capture it. To complete his task, McLaws sends forward up the mountainside his two best infantry brigades, Joseph Kershaw's Brigade of South Carolinians and William Barksdale's Brigade of Mississippians. During the late hours of the 12th, Ford sends urgent messages to Colonel Miles in Harper's Ferry pleading for reinforcements, to which Miles promises to send 3 regiments and 2 guns to his brigade's support. That night, Colonel Ford falls ill and command of the brigade falls to Lycombe Sherrill of the 126th New York. Between 6:37 a.m. on Saturday, September 13th, Kershaw's brigade gets in motion, with his double-line brigade formation moving up the dense mountainside. Barksdale's brigade swings around to the south to attempt to outflank the Yankees on their right, but the rugged and dense terrain hinders their flanking movement. Sherrill's line of battle stretches for 300 yards in front of the breastworks. The Marylanders on the left flank flee in panic when they hear the Confederates give the order to charge bayonets. Kershaw's brigade advances within 80 yards and engages Ford's brigade in a heated firefight, getting the action on Maryland Heights started. Despite heavy fighting, Kershaw's men are unable to make a breakthrough against the breastworks. By 10 a.m., Barksdale's brigade has succeeded in getting into the right and rear of Ford's battle line and fires a ragged volley into the Union position, severely wounding Colonel Sherrill. After Sherrill's wounding, command and control breaks down in the Federal line and panic soon spreads through the ranks. Men quickly abandon their posts and flee down the heights. By 11 a.m., the Federal barricade is ordered to be abandoned by Major Sylvester Hewitt of the 32nd Ohio, acting on Colonel Ford's behalf on the heights, despite a continued gallant defense of the raw Federal troops. However, as Miles arrives on the scene, he orders the brigade to retake the crest. When the Federals hike back up the hillside around 11:30, they find the breastworks occupied by the Confederates, who unleash a hail of musketry upon the shaken blue ranks. After Miles returns to the town, Ford is left with the impression that he has been given discretionary orders to abandon Maryland Heights if he finds the position compromised and a withdrawal necessary. This critical misunderstanding will prove fatal to the Union defenders of Harper's Ferry. By 3:30, Barksdale's Mississippians overlap the Union right flank while the South Carolinians and Kershaw's brigade press their front. Under this intense pressure, Ford abandons the crest once and for all at 4:30 as the men in the ranks protest the order. Miles watches in stunned disbelief as Ford's brigade snakes his way down the mountainside. He yells, "God Almighty, they're coming down! Hell and damnation!" When they reach Harper's Ferry, Ford's men are put up on Bolivar Heights with the other brigades there, where they will wait for the impending attack the next morning. The Confederates proceed to occupy Maryland Heights that evening. While McLaws' division is busy engaging the Federal forces on Maryland Heights during the afternoon of the 13th, the remaining divisions in Stonewall Jackson's command are busy maneuvering into positions around Harper's Ferry to tie the noose around Miles' garrison. A year earlier, Stonewall Jackson had commanded the Confederate garrison at Harper's Ferry and is well aware of the town's defensive deficiencies when he marches towards it on September 13th. Jackson's command begins a 13-mile march to Harper's Ferry at daylight. Meanwhile, further east, John G. Walker's division crosses the Potomac back into Northern Virginia and reaches the base of Loudoun Heights at about 10 a.m., where they start their long trek up the steep mountainside. Around the same time, McLaws' division is busy mopping up the resistance on Maryland Heights. The Confederates now control 2 of the 3 heights overlooking Harper's Ferry. Dixon Miles soon learns that, on top of the loss of Maryland Heights, the rebels are now on Loudoun Heights. Even worse, Jackson's divisions are approaching Bolivar Heights to the west. However, before the noose is tightened around Harper's Ferry, Miles sends a message to Major General McClellan reporting that he can only hold out for a maximum of 48 hours and requires support. Upon receiving the message, the Army of the Potomac commander then sends 3 different couriers to Miles with word to hold on, and that help is on its way. On the morning of Sunday the 14th, the Confederates continue to move into positions to close Jackson's trap around Harper's Ferry. During the previous night, Walker got his men to work building passable roadways up Loudoun Heights. By 8 o'clock in the morning, 5 rifled artillery pieces are up on the cliffs looking down on the town. However, Walker has been ordered by Jackson to hold his fire until McLaws is ready to fire as well. McLaws' men, meanwhile, are equally busy hacking away at the thickets on Maryland Heights to build passes up the mountain for his guns. It takes 200 men pulling on heavy ropes to haul each cannon up the steep cliffside. By 2 p.m., the first pair of rifle guns are up on the top of Maryland Heights, overlooking Harper's Ferry. After waiting impatiently for several hours, Walker decides to have his batteries in Loudoun Heights open fire at 1 p.m. Some of his shells fall into the town. An hour later, McLaws' batteries open up a general bombardment from Maryland Heights. McLaws is under great pressure, as he is aware that his brigades holding Crampton's Gap and South Mountain are being pressed by William B. Franklin's 6th Corps. If Harper's Ferry doesn't fall soon, his and R.H. Anderson's divisions will be trapped in Pleasant Valley with the Federals behind them. The Confederate artillery battery's barrage on Harper's Ferry causes pandemonium in the Union garrison inside the town. Federal guns in Bolivar Heights and Camp Hill turn around to fire back at Maryland and Loudoun Heights, but these guns cannot reach their rebel counterparts, too high and too far away. Confederate batteries pound Harper's Ferry and its defenders, knocking out 4 guns, blowing up 2 caissons, and practically destroying the wavering morale of the infantry. While the bombardment continues, Stonewall Jackson's infantry deploy for action in front of the Federal breastworks south of Harper's Ferry. A.B. Hill's Light Division, tasked with taking the town itself, moves along the Shenandoah River to the Federal left flank at 3 p.m., intending to sweep around the Union defenses and force its way into the town streets from Schoolhouse Ridge. Meanwhile, John R. Jones and Lawton's divisions demonstrate in front of Bolivar Heights. Darkness prevents any further major movements against the town, and Jackson now has no choice but to wait until morning to close the trap around Harper's Ferry. While Jackson is busy sealing the Federal garrison at Harper's Ferry, relief is on its way toward the beleaguered garrison in the form of William B. Franklin's 6th Corps, which has to force its way through McLaws' thin line holding Crampton's Gap and South Mountain. As the Battle of South Mountain rages over Turner's and Fox's Gap further north on the morning and afternoon of September 14th, the fighting Crampton's Gap forms its own sort of sub-engagement of that overall action, the Battle of Crampton's Gap or Battle of Burkittsville. Union forces from Major General Henry W. Slocum's 1st Division of Franklin's 6th Corps lead the advance to Crampton's Gap that morning. Tasked with holding this sector of South Mountain are the Georgians of Paul J. Sims' brigade and McLaws' division. However, since Sims incorrectly assumes that the Federals will attempt to force a Brownsville Pass rather than Crampton's Gap, he stations the majority of his regiments there instead, leaving just the 10th Georgia and Colonel Thomas T. Mumford's cavalry brigade to defend the gap. By 12:30 p.m., Franklin's 6th Corps has still not engaged the enemy in Crampton's Gap. McClellan wants immediate action against the Confederates, but Franklin is content to rest Slocum's division while Major General William F. Smith's 2nd Division approaches Burkittsville. The Federals finally deploy for action at 4 p.m., after hours of idling in front of Crampton's Gap as Slocum's division enters Burkittsville. Bartlett kicks off the fight at 4 p.m. by engaging the Confederates deployed in front of Crampton's Gap. That afternoon, the Confederate defenders in Crampton's Gap, much like the rest of the Battle of South Mountain, are heavily outnumbered, and the Federals soon press their positions at the base of the hill. Hal Cobb's brigade of Georgians arrive on the scene around 4 to 4:30, and Mumford relinquishes command to the Georgia politician turned brigadier. Before all 3 of Slocum's brigade can attack the pass at once, Tolbert's 1st New Jersey Brigade breaks from cover at 5:30 p.m. to open an attack on the Confederate right center. The New Jerseyans attack in double brigade lines, running across the open fields toward the Stonewall. Colonel Tolbert shouts to his New Jersey troops, "Remember Manassas and Gaines' Mill," referencing 2 of their most notable defeats. Bartlett's and Newton's brigades soon join in the attack, rushing across the open fields toward the Confederate defensive line on the Stonewall beneath South Mountain. With Slocum's entire division pressing against the rebel line, the Confederates abandon their position and fall back towards Crampton's Gap. Tolbert's 1st New Jersey Brigade pursues the retreating Confederates into Crampton's Gap at 6 o'clock. With his entire battle line crumbling in the Gap, Cobb sends an urgent message to Sims asking for reinforcements to be sent into Crampton's Gap. Sims sends a few regiments, but it is not enough to stem the Federal onslaught in the pass. Fighting soon spills into Paget's Field in the center crossroads of Crampton's Gap at 6:30. Cobb tries to rally the remnants of his battered line in Paget's Field. Many returned to the front, but others had enough fighting for one day and continued their retreat. Tolbert's New Jerseyans and Bartlett's brigade approached the intersection in Paget's Field around 6:45 p.m. as darkness began to settle in around them. Meanwhile, elements of Baldy Smith's 2nd Division are moving up the left flank of the Confederate line. Back in Paget's Field, the 1st New Jersey Brigade fires off concentrated volleys into the defending Georgians. The stubborn Georgians return fire with fierce volleys of their own, but are soon cut down, with their dead and dying piled up in Paget's Field. Cobb's defensive line soon melts away, and the victorious Federals pour into the field. Newton's brigade passes through the exhausted New Jersey Brigade and Bartlett's tired brigade to continue the pursuit. By 7 p.m., the Battle of Crampton's Gap is over, having ended in a Union tactical victory. However, although Cobb's and Parham's brigades have been defeated and almost destroyed, they have accomplished their mission in defending the Gap as long as possible and delaying Franklin's 6th Corps from reaching Pleasant Valley, where it could trap McLaws and R.H. Anderson's division around the Maryland Heights area. Cobb's stubborn defense in Crampton's Gap has brought valuable time for Jackson's operations at Harper's Ferry. On Sunday evening, September 14th, senior officers meet with Colonel Miles for a council of war. Some of the officers feel that Harper's Ferry should be evacuated as soon as possible. Others, including Brigadier General Julius White, plead with Colonel Miles to try and recapture Maryland Heights. He dismisses these very reasonable suggestions, claiming the Heights are of no further consequence. Miles proclaims that he is determined to hold on to Harper's Ferry to the last extremity, with a fight now set for the next morning over Bolivar Heights. Disgusted with Miles' incompetence, Colonel Benjamin F. Grimes Davis refused to be cooped up in the town. So that night, he and 1,400 Union troopers broke out of the Confederate encirclement. Riding west and north, the column reached the sleepy little town of Sharpsburg at midnight before moving on towards the Pennsylvania borderline, escaping Jackson's trap. Meanwhile, Jackson's men aren't idle. Colonel Stapleton Crutchfield, Jackson's chief of artillery, deploys his batteries on lower Bolivar Heights and Schoolhouse Ridge. With 70 Confederate guns in front on lower Bolivar Heights and Schoolhouse Ridge, on the flank at Loudoun Heights, and behind the Union position at Maryland Heights, the rebel batteries unleashed a fury of shot and shell at 6 a.m. on Monday morning, September 15th. Federal gunners soon reply, but one by one fall silent as they run out of ammunition. When the Confederate artillery finally quiets its relentless bombardment of Harper's Ferry at 7 a.m., Jackson orders his 3 divisions forward against Bolivar Heights. The men prepare to face off against a strong Union defense on the heights, but soon, white flags begin sprouting up from the Federal line. Intermittent Confederate artillery shells continue raining down on the town, one of which explodes a few feet from Miles and mortally wounds him. The colonel whispers to his aide-de-camp, "Well, Mr. Benny, we have done our duty, but where can McClellan be?" Colonel Dixon S. Miles dies the next morning, his last words being to Captain Eugene McGrath, "Captain, I have done my duty to my country, and I'm ready to die. God bless you." Brigadier General White assumes command of the Federal Garrison at Harper's Ferry, and it is an unenviable chore to now surrender his new command to Stonewall Jackson. Donning his best uniform and mounted on a magnificent black charger, Julius White rides out to Stonewall Jackson and capitulates the Federal Garrison to him at 7 p.m. that evening. After a 4-day siege, the Battle of Harper's Ferry has ended. Jackson's men captured much that day: 73 cannon, 13,000 small arms, 200 supply wagons, and more than 12,000 men. No other captured Union troops or hardware will exceed the capitulation of Harper's Ferry during the war. With 12,419 men being taken prisoner at Harper's Ferry, it will become the largest surrender of U.S. Army forces until the fall of Bataan in the Philippines during World War II, 80 years later. News of Harper's Ferry capitulation reaches General Robert E. Lee later that day on the 15th. It is good news, coming right off the heels of the Confederate defeat at South Mountain the previous day. Jackson's victory at Harper's Ferry changes the entire strategic situation of the Maryland campaign, with Lee now able to continue on with his invasion of the North. General Lee feels great relief when he reads Jackson's letter stating, "Through God's blessing, Harper's Ferry and its garrison are to be surrendered."